President Trump has been briefed as the search continues for the second crew member of an F-15E fighter jet that went down over Iran. And it comes as the president reportedly says the downing of that jet will not affect his negotiations with Iran as the conflict now enters the sixth week. The jet went down near Karg Island and the pilot was ejected safely. A second U.S. jet was also reportedly targeted and hit near the Strait of Hormuz. Let's bring in now former U.S. Ambassador to NATO, Kurt Volker. Kurt, I'll just get your top line thoughts here on this downed jet, this search that continues. Iran is also searching for this service member, potentially could use him as a hostage in these negotiations. How does this change the calculus for us?
Well, I think it is incredibly urgent and important that the United States find and recover this airman. Hopefully that does happen, but as you say, the Iranians are doing everything they can to track him down as well, and will use him for propaganda purposes as a hostage. And if the Iranians do capture him, it of course will have an impact on negotiations. I think we're at a stage now where we are facing a very difficult decision. We have a regime that is hostile, that will conduct attacks against its neighbors, the Gulf states, that will shut down shipping, drive up oil prices, conduct terrorist attacks. And if we leave them in place, that's what we will be negotiating with. So it's either go all the way and try to remove the regime, or start negotiating with them knowing that we're going to have a long-term problem. Neither is a good outcome, but I think that's the dilemma we're in now. And I don't think they will negotiate in good faith at all.
Well, they haven't. Certainly haven't so far. I want to talk about the NATO secretary who's coming here to visit with President Trump as the president continues to, use rhetoric that says that he might reconsider the U.S.'s place in NATO, our relationship with NATO. This is the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, doubling down on that. Listen here.
Unfortunately, after this conflict is concluded, we are going to have to re-examine that relationship. Has it now become a one-way street where America is simply in a position to defend Europe, but when we need the help of our allies, they're going to deny us basing rights and they're going to deny us overflight? I think these are very legitimate questions.
Legitimate questions. Well, what do you think of that, though? Leaving NATO?
Yeah, I think this is completely wrong. I think that we did not inform allies, we did not consult with allies, we did not set up a clear goal, a common operation, we didn't ask them. So this went off the rails from the very beginning. And remember, just 2 months ago, we were talking about taking over Greenland, which of course upsets European allies as well. We both need to take a breath, realize that NATO has a very important purpose, which is peace in Europe. Peace in Europe was fractured or destroyed twice in the last century. Then we had a Cold War. We do not want that to happen again. So we need to stop the rhetoric, talk to each other, and come up with a way forward on actually opening up the Persian Gulf and ending the war with Iran and restoring security in Europe.
But
That's what we need.
I think it is a fair point, though, the president continues to make, is that the European allies benefit much more than we do when it comes to this NATO alliance. And I'm thinking about Poland as one key ally in all of this. I was in Poland when the war on Ukraine began, when Russia invaded, and I remember seeing those Patriot missiles being brought in, and gosh, I probably took 30,000 pictures of them. They're beautiful. And it's so crucial and critical and important to a place like Poland. This is the Polish PM, Donald Tusk, warning against the breakup of NATO, saying the threat of NATO's breakup, easing sanctions on Russia, a massive energy crisis in Europe, halting aid for Ukraine, and blocking the loan for Kyiv by Orban. It all looks like Putin's dream plan. So they are extremely concerned. But what about the president's point that the European allies benefit far more from NATO than we do, and yet in a situation like this, he feels they're not being very helpful?
Yeah, well, let's look at the history here. If we didn't have NATO, we would have to invent it because Russia wants to take over other countries in Europe, and massive war in Europe massively affects U.S. interests. They're our largest trading partners, they're the biggest investors, they're the biggest foreign job creators in the United States. So this is very much a mutually beneficial alliance for both of us. Then you look at the history. After 9/11, it was NATO that invoked Article 5 for the first and only time to support the United States. They joined us in fighting in Afghanistan because we went about it the right way. We defined a mission, we asked for their support, we got that. Same thing, in Iraq. They allowed us to use bases to deliver troops to Iraq. We went about that in a very methodical way. The Gulf War under President George H.W. Bush, they have been there for us quite a lot, much more than they would have wanted to. But they did that because of the alliance. And this is one where I think both sides have missed the point. They've missed the opportunity. We did not consult and work with them in a way that would be effective. We insulted them. We tried to take territory from Denmark. And they denied us the ability to use bases, which is a mistake.
So what do you think happens when the Secretary comes here?
Yes. Yeah, I think with Rutte, behind closed doors with President Trump, we have to talk about what's the way forward. What is the goal here now with Iran? Is it regime change or is it negotiating with the regime? What is that going to look like? And what operation can we put together jointly with NATO allies that will be effective? Right now, people talk about escorting vessels in the Gulf. That won't work because Iran can still strike any vessel it wants. So we've got to put together a viable plan and work together on that and stop the sniping.
Okay. Kurt Volker, always good to talk to you. Always learn something new. Thank you so much for joining me, and happy Easter.
Thank you. You too. Happy Easter.
Hey, everyone. I'm Emily Campagno. Catch me and my co-hosts Harris Faulkner and Kaylee McEnany on Outnumbered every weekday at 12 p.m. Eastern, or set your DVR. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page for daily highlights.